August 21st, 1942. As dawn breaks over the black volcanic sands of Guadalcanal, the humid air at Hell's Point is thick with gunpowder and death. The beach is littered with hundreds of Japanese soldiers, once elite warriors of Colonel Ichiki's 28th Infantry Regiment, now torn and lifeless in their bloodied uniforms. Crouched behind a barricade of sandbags and palm logs, Corporal Dean Wilson stares blankly at his Browning automatic rifle. Its wooden stock is splintered, its barrel scorched. Hours ago, it misfired at the worst possible moment. But what haunts Wilson isn't the malfunction. It's how quickly he adapted, how instinctively he had to kill with his machete in the chaos that followed. Wilson wasn't alone. Across the beach, Marines like him had survived a tidal wave of Japanese assault by doing something their enemy never expected: fighting with sustained mobile automatic fire. Captain Charles Brush, leading the patrol, looked over the carnage and knew they had stumbled into more than just a defensive skirmish. They had just witnessed a turning point. American industrial firepower had met Japanese warrior tradition and shattered it. The numbers are staggering. Over 800 Japanese soldiers dead, just 34 Marines lost. But these statistics tell only part of the story. The real impact was psychological and tactical. The Japanese had never before encountered squad-level weapons like the bar, portable, deadly, and distributed across every American infantry unit. It wasn't just a new weapon. It was a new way of fighting war. Private Walter Ollie, a bar gunner in the 5th Marine Division, would later reflect on the weapon's significance. "The bar was everything to us," he said. "When they handed me that rifle, they weren't just giving me a weapon. They were making me responsible for my whole squad's survival." At 20 pounds, the Browning automatic rifle was no easy burden, but it gave every Marine squad its own mobile machine gun, something unheard of in 1942. Unlike the crew-served weapons of World War I, the bar could be carried and fired by one man. It fired .30-06 cartridges at a rate of up to 650 rounds per minute, enough to punch through jungle cover, enemy armor, or human flesh with terrifying ease. With one in every 12-man squad, Marines could now lay down suppressive fire, maneuver while engaging, and hold positions that would have crumbled under traditional rifle fire. The Japanese, on the other hand, were prepared for a very different fight. Colonel Ichiki, confident from victories in China and Manchuria, believed he was facing poorly trained American troops. His elite infantry advanced in tight formations, bayonets fixed, chanting as they charged. What they didn't know was that the Marines had a bar waiting in nearly every foxhole, each man trained to deliver controlled bursts, not panic fire. As Ichiki's troops crossed Alligator Creek in the early hours, they moved in perfect formation, just as they had done against Chinese defenses. But this wasn't China, and these weren't scattered, retreating forces. These were Americans, well-armed, well-dug in, and carrying weapons that could wipe out an entire platoon in seconds. Corporal Wilson's bar misfired at the worst moment, but his training kicked in. Dropping the weapon, he drew his machete and killed 3 Japanese soldiers in close quarters. His story is brutal, but symbolic, because as he fought hand to hand, the rest of the bars along the line opened up, and what followed was a massacre. The sound of those rifles, firing in coordinated bursts, became a symphony of mechanical dominance. Ichiki's entire battle doctrine unraveled in minutes. The Japanese charges, built on discipline and shock value, were slaughtered by overlapping fields of bar fire. Where the Japanese relied on human waves, Marines relied on tactical positioning and firepower. And that's where the bar changed everything. One gunner could hold back dozens of attackers, controlling the battlefield with precise bursts, conserving ammunition while devastating the enemy. By dawn, the beach was a graveyard. Lieutenant George Corder watched through binoculars as Japanese formations dissolved under automatic fire. War correspondent Richard Tregiscus later described it as a comedy of toys. trees falling, men scrambling, rifles spitting sheets of flame. But to Marines pulling the triggers, it was anything but funny. It was calculated, methodical, and necessary. The psychological impact was massive. Colonel Ichiki made desperate attempts to break the line, deploying cannons and machine guns, but it was too late. The Marines weren't depending on fixed emplacements or static defenses. They had distributed firepower, decentralized, and impossible to fully suppress. Each bar represented a node of lethal force. Take one out, and 3 others picked up the slack. By the end, nearly all of Ichiki's force was dead. Only 15 Japanese soldiers were captured alive. American losses were minimal in comparison. But more importantly, the battle had proven something even military theorists hadn't fully realized. Automatic rifles at the squad level could not just change tactics. They could redefine warfare itself. The bar forced a complete rethinking of infantry combat. Marine squads reorganized around it. Fire teams were created, built to support the gunner, supply him, and move with him. By 1945, bars had increased from 513 per Marine division to over 860. Entire campaigns would be fought under protection of that 20-pound weapon. The Japanese response was equally dramatic. After the disaster at Hell's Point, Japanese commanders began abandoning open-wave tactics and retreating into fortress warfare, digging caves and tunnels at Iwo Jima and Okinawa, where bars were less effective. Even their doctrine had to adapt. But the industrial gap remained insurmountable. The U.S. produced over 351,000 bars by the end of the war. The Japanese, unable to keep up, rationed machine guns among only their most elite units. In modern terms, the bar was a force multiplier, long before the phrase became common. It gave individual squads the ability to project firepower previously reserved for entire companies. From Vietnam's M60 to today's squad automatic weapons, every battlefield innovation traces its roots back to Guadalcanal, back to Marines like Dean Wilson and Walter Ollie, who fought not just with courage, but with superior tools. When Corporal Wilson finally stood up from that black sand, his damaged bar slung over his shoulder, he wasn't just a survivor. He was the face of a new kind of warfare, where industrial might, portable firepower, and trained infantry could rewrite the rules of battle. Hell's Point was no longer just a beach. It was the birthplace of modern infantry combat.